Gracious God, let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be found acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. Do not be anxious. Sometimes, my dear sisters and brothers, the best words of encouragement come from those facing difficult situations. And this is certainly the case with these words of Paul on which we are reflecting today. The apostle was facing a dark and uncertain time in his life. He was a prisoner of Rome, awaiting trial, which ruling could determine whether he would face execution or be set free. In this letter from prison, the letter of Paul to the church at Philippi, he writes, "Do not be anxious about anything." He who had everything about which to be anxious says, "Do not be anxious about anything." These words of Paul echo the words of Jesus. "Therefore I tell you," says Jesus, "do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, or about your body, what you shall wear." Matthew 6:25, and you can also see Luke 12 and 22. Worry and anxiety are often used interchangeably. Some translations put the Greek as "do not worry," and some as "do not be anxious." To worry or to be anxious is to be in a state where one cares so much about temporal things that such care becomes distracting and causes disquiet and uneasiness to the individual. It is to have an unceasing dread or fear of a situation, maybe a person, or about life in general. It is to be consumed by what might happen, which might really not happen. And I would like to be very clear, my sisters and brothers, that there is some degree to which we must care about the temporal. There is some extent to which we should be concerned about future events. The words of Jesus and Paul are not meant to encourage carelessness or a total lack of concern. Every responsible individual has the duty to care about the things of this life. But when such care goes too far, when that care becomes almost like an obsession, when that care begins to consume us and eat us up and absorb our every moment, it borders on anxiety or worry. In his teaching on worry or anxiety, Jesus points to the folly of worrying or becoming anxious when he says, "And can any of you by worrying add a single hour to your span of life?" When you worry, when you are anxious, can you add a single hour to your span of life? In fact, my sisters and brothers, studies have been conducted that have found that, and this is a quote, psychological distress, even at relatively low levels, is linked to an increased risk of death, unquote. So Jesus' teaching is sound. Instead of adding to one's span of life, worrying or being anxious can actually subtract, take away from one's years. Worry doesn't help you, nor does it help anyone else when you worry. So do not be anxious about anything, is sound advice from the great Apostle Paul. And as he penned these words, I suppose that there's a sense in which Paul was consoling himself as much as those to whom he was writing, as he faced trial, as he sat in that Roman prison. Do not be anxious about anything. Paul doesn't end there though. He says that we should do something. Do not be anxious about anything, but there is something that we can do. And our text today contains what I call the antidote to worry or fear or anxiety. What is the remedy or the solution to the anxiety or the worry that we sometimes experience in life? And Paul has a great answer. He says, prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. That is his prescription for anxiety. Not pills, but prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. People turn to so many other things or options in order to deal with their anxiety and their worry. Paul in this text recommends prayer and supplication. The amount that people sometimes spend to deal with their anxiety is astounding. And Paul in this text recommends prayer with supplication. Prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Anxiety or worry is an indication, or could be an indication, that we are trying too hard on our own to do something about a situation. Through prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, we enter into a relationship of devotion and trust with God, and are reminded that we are not in the struggle alone. I think people become anxious and worried when they think it is all up to them, when they think that they are in this battle all by themselves. But prayer helps us remember that we do not bear our burdens by ourselves. Through prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, we are reminded that God is with us, and we can turn to God and draw on God's power. So the psalmist writes in Psalm 55, "Cast your cares on the Lord, and He will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken." In the first letter of Peter, we read, "Cast all your anxiety on Him, because He cares for you." Anxiety weakens us, but through prayer and supplication, we find strength. We are able to draw on the strength of God. So instead of allowing anxiety to weigh you down, my word today from this reflection is that you lay down the weight of your anxiety by taking it to the Lord in prayer, accompanied by thanksgiving and worship. There's a wonderful hymn that reminds us of the great friend that we have in Jesus. What a friend we have in Jesus. And the hymn says, have you trials and temptations? Is there trouble anywhere? You should never be discouraged. Take it to the Lord in prayer. And that is what Paul is advising. Do not be anxious about anything. But here is something that you can do about your anxiety or your worry. Through prayer and supplication, make your requests be known to God. Remember, my friends, as you leave here today, that anxiety doesn't add a single hour to your life. But through prayer, you bring God's eternal wisdom and light into your circumstances. Someone by the name of Thomas Watson says in The Art of Divine Contentment, it is our work to cast care, and it is God's work to take care. It is our work to cast care. Cast all your cares on the Lord. And it is God's work to take care of us. And so finally, my sisters and brothers, be anxious for nothing, because God is with us in everything. Oh, I love this text today. Paul was a prisoner of Rome. And he says, do not be anxious, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, let your requests be made known to God. In everything, God is with us. We can bring everything to God. I am reminded by this text that there is no circumstance, there is no situation that we might face in life where God will not be with us. You know, there's some friends that will not go with you in certain places. When you face certain circumstances, there's some friends who will just not have your back anymore. But what this text reminds us is that no matter the circumstance, no matter the situation that we might face in life, God will never forsake us. God will be with us. But in everything, or in every situation, we need not be anxious, because we are not alone. God is with us. There is no situation that can cause us, that can cause you, that can cause me to drift beyond God's love and care. No situation, my sisters and brothers. Yes, sometimes we might feel as though God is not there with us. But God is always present. And if there is anything to give assurance, it is contained in these words. In every situation, we can come to God in prayer and supplication with thanksgiving and make our requests known. Every situation, whatever it is, you can bring it to God. It doesn't matter how much you have messed up and now feel bad about it, anxious about what you have done, worried. You can bring it to God in prayer. So, what makes you anxious? Your health? Your financial situation? The state of the nation? Your children's future? What? What creates anxiety for you? What keeps you up at night? Someone said, every evening I turn my worries over to God. He is going to be up all night anyway. Yes, because the psalmist says he never slumbers, he never sleeps. So, why don't you sleep? Turn it over to God. Say a prayer. God is going to be up all night anyway. And God will take care of it and will take care of you. Whatever it is that makes you anxious and causes you to worry, make it known to God in prayer. You know, someone sitting there today or listening may ask the question, but doesn't God already know? Doesn't God already see what I am going through? Yes, my friends, God knows, but when we make our requests known, when we articulate them, when we express them, when we give voice to our concerns, to the things that make us anxious, when we do so to God in prayer and supplication, we demonstrate our faith in God and our willingness to humble ourselves, to recognize our limitations, and to invite God into our every situation. I keep reminding people that God has given us the freedom to choose whether we want God's help or whether we're going to try to help ourselves. God has given us that freedom. And with that freedom, God will not impose on us. So we must invite God in. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and open the door, the one inside must open the door. God is not going to break down the door. We must open and let God in. And that is a sign that we are willing to trust God. We are willing to put our faith and our confidence in God. And so, my sisters and brothers, I know when we look at life nowadays, there are so many things that can make us anxious, that can cause us to worry. But remember, God is with us. And we can give every situation. We can give ourselves totally to God. And God will take care of us. I close by quoting something that Hudson Taylor, a missionary to China and founder of what is today known as the Overseas Missionary Fellowship, said. It was some advice that he gave. Excellent advice. He said, and I quote, "Let us give up our work, our plans, ourselves, our lives, our loved ones, our influence, our all, right into God's hand. And then, when we have given all over to Him, there will be nothing left for us to be troubled about." When we give it all to God, when we give ourselves to God, there will be nothing left for us to be troubled about. So I say today, my dear sisters and brothers, as I look out at this congregation and I see in the different faces, the different concerns, the different needs, we just reminded you that God looks beyond our faults and God sees our needs. Give it all to God. Give yourself completely to God and stop trying it on your own, trying on your own to fix every situation. God is more able and far wiser than you, than any of us. And God can take care of every situation for us. Amen.